You're listening to The Upland Rookie, a podcast presented by Upland Brits. Hey, what's going on, rookies, and welcome to episode 38 of the Upland Rookie Podcast. I'm your host, Will Larson, and as always, this is presented by Upland Brits. Also brought to you by our newest sponsor, Inukshuk Professional Dog Food. Inukshuk's dense formulations ensure that your pup in training and your seasoned bird dog get what they need to succeed in the field. Inukshuk works hard so your dogs can work harder. Check them out at inukshukpro.com. Also brought to you by Pointer Traditions, making the finest dog collars, bird straps, leashes, you name it, on the market today. Both my dogs are rocking custom-sized Pointer Traditions collars, and I cannot say enough about these collars. You got to check them out for yourself. Use my promo code ROOKIE15 to save 15% off your order today at pointertraditions.com. And if you're looking to pick up a French Brittany, look no further than Trinity Bretons, offering puppies, Trinity Upland Academy with George Hickok, Started Dogs, Stud Services. Josh Ryder and his dad are putting out some quality bird dogs, so check them out at trinitybretons.com. And lastly, Gunner Kennels. I've personally used and tested every major kennel brand on the market. After months of hands-on experience, Gunner is the only kennel I'll use for my favorite bird dogs. Man's best friend deserves man's best kennel. All right, what's going on, everyone? Hey, I hope you're doing well. Thanks so much for joining me on episode 37 here. Hey, before we jump too much further in, if you wouldn't mind taking a pause right now, head over to Apple iTunes or Apple Podcasts, not iTunes. Does anyone use iTunes anymore? Head over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify if you're listening on one of those platforms, and leave a rating and review. Would greatly appreciate it. You've heard me say it before, but it's going to help the show reach more listeners. So appreciate that. Guys, today's episode has been a few weeks and honestly, maybe a few months in the making. I sit down with my mentor, Jeff Hoskins, here in Colorado, and I've been wanting to sit down with Jeff for quite a while. But honestly, I didn't know exactly like how to construct an interview with him. So much of my time with Jeff has been spent out training dogs, and I took my time of really kind of crafting. Hey, what would I want to ask Jeff when I sit down with him, and how do I want to construct this interview? And so finally put some things down on paper, got some time to sit down with Jeff, and man, he unloads a wealth of knowledge just through his personal journey, experiences over 35 or 40 years working with bird dogs and Brittany's and even some pointers, which I didn't know. But so yeah, we cover a whole lot in these episodes. We actually had to break these into 2 episodes. So you guys are going to get a bonus episode later in the week. We broke this into two episodes. This one's pretty long itself. Actually, both of them are, but broke them into 2 episodes. So you can kind of digest them maybe a little bit easier as you hear and hear some of Jeff's knowledge and his story really into the bird dog world, and what he's seen from the field trial side as both a judge and running dogs, and hear about some of the field champions that he's produced and some of the breeding and a lot of puppy development too. I love our segment on just what he's looking for in a puppy. You know, picking a pup from a litter is something I get asked a lot on this podcast, and people write in on Instagram and ask, hey, what do you look for in your pups when you're picking them out? You're going to want to key into this episode and listen to some of what Jeff has to share. Again, developing young bird dogs, bird intro is so important and so key in the development of a young puppy. And again, you might want to get a pen and paper out for some of these things. I really just shut my mouth through this episode and let Jeff just share his advice and knowledge and wisdom that he has. So sit back, relax. I know I'm going to be listening back to these for many, many years to come, probably. Be able to remind myself of some of these, so some of this wisdom. I think it's good reminders for all of us, whether you're new to upland hunting and bird dogs, or whether you've been doing it for years, maybe. I think we can all learn something from these next couple episodes with Jeff. And so anyways, we're going to jump in and go from there. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. One more thing before we jump into the episode, I almost forgot. So since we recorded this episode, I have participated now in my first AKC horseback trial a few weeks back, and man, it was a blast. I ended up running win in the puppy stake. And yeah, overall great experience, met some great people, rode some other braces of some of the older dogs, and was able to see just that caliber dog that I was able to ride behind. And so yeah, overall great experience. I'll do another episode, maybe diving in a little bit more. I've gotten some requests on doing kind of a breakdown of the 3 different trial events that I've done, or test events. I've now done the AKC hunt test, AKC trial, horseback trial, and Nastra. And so, yeah, I might do an episode unpacking those a little bit more and sharing some of my experiences between all 3 of them, and go a little bit deeper on that. So more to come on that. But yeah, ran that a few weeks ago with Win. It was a blast, and I know you'll hear a lot more coming up in these next episodes with Jeff. So enjoy. How's the foot doing, by the way? Didn't you break?
Well, so yeah, I screwed up my other one, and so I've been basically rehabbing it like I did the other one, and it's getting good.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's not.
Did you still go out hunting after?
I did, but I hunted by myself so I could go at my own pace.
Yeah.
And I was pushing the envelope.
Okay.
Pretty hard, but I'm okay.
Okay.
I know I'm fine.
Okay.
I know I didn't do what I shouldn't have done, because I mean, it feels fine now.
Good.
But that week at the Home and Garden Show, I intentionally sat still, and that helped it.
Okay, good. Do you mind reminding me how you did this? The most recent injury?
Yeah, I was at the far end of this property. I was probably over a mile from the truck. Eve goes on point. I walk in front of her. She's pointing into a bush. A coyote runs out. I shot and dumped him and flipped him, and he gets up and starts running, and I shot again and missed him, and Eve started chasing him, and I was hollering at her to stop, and reloading at the same time, and stepped in a 2-foot hole and went straight down, and I jammed my foot clear back, and I thought I broke it. And Adam and I were talking about that, because he said, it's always a circus when you go, and I haven't had anybody say that to me. Now I'm starting to wonder, is this just Jeff, or does this happen to everybody? But I mean, I'd step in that hole every time, because I mean, I'm watching, trying to stop the dog. I'm trying to reload a gun, and
it's a lot happening at one time.
And that freaking hole was huge. And of course, I mean, I'm over a mile from the truck. I thought I broke my foot, and I talked myself into walking out of there. I had cell coverage. But I just kept walking, and
that's good.
And so I get up the next morning, and I didn't tell Liz that night what I'd done, because I wanted to, get an assessment. If I felt okay, I was gonna, continue to hunt. And I stayed overnight out in Colby. And I get up the next morning to put weight on it, and almost fell over.
Well, I'm sure you have 100 more stories similar to that, don't you?
Yeah, Adam's got one of the better ones with the deer racing.
Oh, don't worry, we're gonna get to that one at the end. So we're gonna we'll come around. So I know a lot of Brittany, anyone who's buying a Brittany out there, they're probably gonna see Sniksoh on a pedigree. Can you talk a little bit about, first off, what does that mean, and how did you come up with that?
Well, it was simple. When I first started out with dogs, I started reading books, and one of the first books that I read that I would highly recommend is Wing and Shot by Robert Whaley, and his last name spelled backwards is Elhue, and that was his kennel name, was Elhue, and it was with English pointers, and it's a very well-known pointer bloodline, and a lot of what I patterned myself off of in the beginning was a lot of the things I read in his book. It's a very, very thorough book, starting with the introduction with a puppy and picking a puppy and bloodlines, and all the way through the training process into field trials and winning field trials, and then also raising litters of puppies. So,
nice.
That's how I got started on that. You want to call it a tangent? It probably is an accurate term, and I've stuck with it, and it's created a lot of problems for people that have to announce placements, and as far as the pronunciation of that word.
I can imagine. I think even I pronounced it incorrectly for a couple of years, maybe, but
yeah,
I think I finally got it right. Well, it's definitely a name you'll stick with you when you see it on a pedigree. So. Well, that's great. Let's back up a little bit, and first off, put us on the map. Where are you located, and tell us a little bit about who Jeff Hoskins is.
Okay. My wife and I, Liz, live in Parker, Colorado. We live out in the country on 5 acres, and behind every field trialer is a very understanding wife if they're not involved themselves, and Liz is we've been married for over 30 years. I got to do the math. 86 puts us into about 36 years, and
wow.
And she likes the dogs a lot, and is a very important part of what I do with the dogs. I couldn't do it without her. We don't have a lot of dogs, and we don't raise a lot of litters. We raise maybe 1, maybe 2 litters a year. Last year we didn't even raise a litter of pups, and it seemed like kind of an empty summer because of it. I'm an entrepreneur and own my own business, and I've managed my whole time with the dogs to balance between job and field trials and hunting, and I've always done all the training myself, and that's that balancing act is a big part of what I've done for a hobby and enjoy, and on a lot of different fronts.
Yeah, that's cool. I don't think I've ever asked you this. Is Liz pretty involved when you are raising a litter of puppies? Is she pretty involved in the puppy process and all that, or is that mainly you still?
It's me. Okay. She always tells me when I talk about raising a litter, well, I don't want to whelp them, because she got stuck a couple of times having to deliver puppies, and it's kind of a nerve-wracking process, especially if it's the first time the female dog has had puppies, and of course, the times that she got stuck doing it, that was the case, but she's learned. She gets attached to a dog real quick, and she's learned to wait until the dog appears to be a keeper before she gets attached. So she distances herself, or has taught herself to distance herself from getting involved with the individual dogs. Until we come up with the idea that it's a keeper.
Okay. That's a smart move. Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, I think a good spot to start is probably, share a little bit about your journey starting and getting into upland hunting and then bird dogs and all that. Like, did you grow up hunting? Was that part of your family? Or just share a little bit more about that as you think back to how you got started.
I was probably 12 or 13 years old. My dad hunted as a young man, but really didn't when we got older. We lived at the time in eastern Nebraska, Fremont, Nebraska, and I think what really got me started was I like dogs, and we had a house dog. I taught her all kinds of tricks. I think it's in my DNA. All my cousins show livestock, cattle and sheep. My grandfather farmed with horses when he first started out. My grandma drove horses in the field during harvest season.
Wow.
And I think it just goes back to a love of animals. My neighbor in Fremont had a German Shorthair pointer that I thought was a really cool dog. His name was Tex, and that fellow's name was Don Bodenall, and he actually took me duck hunting the first time I ever went hunting, and but he told me that his next dog was going to be a Brittany. And another neighbor had a Brittany named Britt, of course, probably the most common Brittany name out there. And I mowed their lawn when I was a little kid, and I got to play with Britt, and Britt loved to retrieve, and he was a really neat dog personality-wise. And but what Don had told me about dogs made me lean towards Brittany's, and then Britt kind of pushed me over the edge. The very first time I shot at a pheasant was on my uncle's farm in Iowa, and I got it. And so the shooting part of it has never really been that much of a challenge for me, or not that I'm a great shot, but after shooting that pheasant, I thought to myself, well, this is fun. I want to do more of this, but man, it'd be cool to have a dog. And we shortly thereafter moved to Iowa, and I fished quite a bit when I was a little kid. When we lived in Nebraska, when we moved to Iowa, there wasn't the water nearby, and there was a litter of puppies in the newspaper, and my dad and I went and got one. So that's and it was a litter of Brittany's.
Okay.
And that's how I started out with Brittany's. And
okay.
In fact, that particular dog, I wound up getting a second one, and that was my first really good dog. Tiff was her name, Sniksoh, Miss Tiffany. That's in between those two dogs, I read the book Wing and Shot.
Okay. And how old were you in between around this time?
I was 14.
You were 14?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was 14 when I got, and I was probably about.
And you were reading Wing and
15.
Shot. And
I was probably 15 when I got Tiff.
Okay.
And I got her from a breeder, and it's a great dog story because I think Tiff was 6 months old and pointed a pheasant for me, and we were going down a fence row, and she pointed a half dozen of pheasants for me, and shot the first rooster over, and Tiff, I thought I had something special, and that's what got me started. Thinking, wow, if she's something special, maybe I ought to go to a field trial.
You were already thinking that at that age, and kind of thinking through.
Yeah, because I read the book Wing and Shot.
So that got you. That kind of got you excited.
I probably read that 3 times.
Wow.
when I was a little kid, and I, I mean, it's a great dog story because, Tiff came to me at an age, it's a transitionary time for a teenager, and she went off to college with me. And,
oh wow!
and at first at college, I had to stay in a dorm, and I tried to figure out how to get out of that so that Tiff could come to school with me. And,
oh my gosh!
And I was going to field trials at that time, and wanted to, didn't want to do all the running around to go back home and get her, and Brittany's are great chick magnets too, so it really worked well from that.
You heard it here first, folks. You heard it here first.
Yeah. So.
Oh, that's fun. So you were doing all the training yourself with Tiff, right? You were
yeah. I mean, I had
working your way through it.
As far as help, I lived in a rural area of Iowa. There was one other fellow in town that had been to a field trial. His name was Butch Meyer, and he had German short hairs, and when I called him up, and my dad knew him, and we knew him through cattle and that kind of thing, and I said I had a dog, and he said, well, at the field trials they really have to run, and I said, yeah, I know, that's what I've read. and I said, I think she does, and I had a hard time getting Butch to believe that she really was as aggressive and pattern as what it takes to be successful at field trials, and finally I got Butch to have a look at her, and he said, you're right, she does run really well. and the funny thing was, Butch was a very quiet individual, and said, I think you got a good one there. And then later in the afternoon, when I went home, he called me and says, Jeff, you need to take that dog to a field trial. And that's as close as I had to someone who took me underneath their wing. Most of my friends at that time had hounds, and hide prices were up, and raccoons were a lot of fun to go out and chase at night, and this was before the days of tracking collars, so that always made for all kinds of excitement, getting everybody gathered up, and when they'd go across rivers and things like that. But I was the only. I had another friend that had a lab, and other than that, everybody had hounds that had dogs in my of my friends, and I've had lots of friends along the line, and that's probably where I've learned the most, picking friends' brains on how they're training, and
sure.
Bob Burchett is a longtime friend of mine that I met when I was probably about 18. And
you've known him that long?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, over 40 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's a long time.
that's a long time.
And an individual like that, Bob's now a professional dog trainer and has been for a long time, and very successful at what he does, and I've had in my mind, an unusual number of friends that when we first met were amateur trainers like I was, and I am, and they hunted, and then and had dogs, and eventually turned professional. And I've had an unusual number of friends turn pro while I've known them. Bob was probably the first one. Jim Hoyer, Mark Garkey, Steve Chang, Steve Bailey.
Okay.
When I first met those guys, they were all
Just getting into it still,
and then eventually turned pro.
Wow.
And so I've, and there's more. I'll
sure.
think of them here, but there's a large number of them.
Yeah.
And not having, again, living in a rural area and not having access to a lot of bird dog people, I relied on books, and I learned a lot when I went to the field trials. That was my opportunity to learn about dog training, and I tried to take advantage of that.
Yeah. A lot of it sounds like you figured it out on your own and studied up and read and asked questions.
Well, the books, the books, and the training seminars.
You talked about those.
I got a lot out of the Rick Smith and Ronnie Smith, dog training seminars.
That's right.
Basically carried on after Delmer got them started. John Han, I've gone to his seminar. Dobbs did an electric collar training seminar I went to.
Okay.
I remember Bill Hancock, when I was a little kid, putting on a seminar that I went to.
Oh, wow.
There's another fellow that was a pro, and he went back to being an amateur. That's a friend of mine too.
Oh, wow.
I'll
cool.
think of more of those as we go through the conversation.
That's cool.
I'm sure.
So when you think back, getting into this, the bird dogs, you got your first Brittany Tiff. First off, just what is it about the Brittany? Because you could have got one Brit and then changed breeds, but you've stuck with Brittany's for a long time. What is it about them?
For the breed, a Brittany fit a lot better in an apartment when you were going to college.
Practicality.
But that is, in a nutshell, where the Brittany breed excels is being a pet as well as a hunting dog. And their size, and you can hunt the same dog that you campaign at the field trial too, and they're they have a lot of desire to please, a lot of them, and you can play off of that as a trainer. And they've always been, the continental breeds have always been more popular with what you want to call the meat hunters. And again, it came down to a guy that had a good German short hair told me his next dog was going to be a Brittany. And I have had English pointers. And
you've had English pointers?
I've had two.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and one was a pretty good one.
Wow.
He got bit by a rattlesnake and died.
No way. Oh.
Yeah, that's another story in itself.
Oh.
But the thing about the English pointers is, you'll probably hear me in a couple times in this discussion relate dogs and field trial dogs back to car racing in a lot of ways. And the English pointers are the best, in my mind. This is probably controversial, but the best athletes. They bigger, stronger, faster, more stylish, a lot of nose, a lot of point, a lot of style on point, and that's allowed me to see that other side. And early on, with the Brittany's, a fellow by the name of Bob Merkel, who was a German Shorthair pro, and I met him at probably the second field trial that I ever went to, through Butch Meyer. He told me that what Brittany's need is more style and more nose. And I think he also meant that they needed more pointing instinct when he said style. And that's been one of the things that I've really focused on. And I learned from the English pointers is the English pointers want to point, they want to stand there, and they've had that bred into them for more years than any other breed, and that makes the training process so much easier when you have those traits in a dog, and I've tried to bring that through in the dogs that I've kept in the Brittany breed.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. I did not know you owned anything besides the Brittany. Wow.
Yeah.
I learned something today.
Yeah, and Jed was the pointer that we had.
Okay.
And it was a sad situation. I mean, that from the time I knew we had a problem until he was dead after getting bit by that rattlesnake, it was less than 7 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And
that's fast.
And we were just out running, and I never even saw him get hit by the snake, but I saw the
fang marks
on him.
Jeez.
So
that's tough.
Day.
So I think you touched on already kind of what led you into getting into the field trial realm. It sounds like you were pretty young, and you were like, all right, this, from what you've read and experienced, like you were committed. You were getting into those trials. Have you tried any other types of trials, events, hunt tests, and what was that like, and why the AKC field trials? Why is that kind of what you've stuck with versus some of the other ones out there?
NASTRA was getting going in the early 80s in northeast Iowa, where I grew up, and I went to some of those trials and watched. I had a friend that had an English pointer that got started doing that and was active, and hunt tests came in, I want to say in the mid 80s, and I judged one of those fairly early on. For me, I can tell more about a dog faster with the AKC format, especially when you're pushing them off of a horse, and looking for that range, but yet requiring the handle. Again, it's similar to car racing. When people think about what does running a dog off a horse have to do with me trying to go hunting, for pheasants in eastern Colorado, it seems kind of far-fetched, and I can certainly understand why they really wouldn't be that related. But it's kind of like a top fuel dragster and a Formula One car doesn't have anything to do with your average passenger car in a lot of ways.
Sure.
However, a lot of the technology, a lot of the knowledge, it's just basically a car, only more so. And it's the same thing with field trial dogs. They're hunting dogs, only more so. And the NASTRA trials, the judging format, a lot of people really like that. It's a straight point system, and there's a lot of advantages to that because the equipment costs are so much less. The hunt tests, in my mind, still to this day, are a great stepping stone. Introduction for people, wanting to get more enjoyment out of their dog. NASTRA and hunt tests, field trials, they're all ways of extending your hunting season. And that's really the way I've always looked at field trials, is it's a way of extending my hunting season. I don't really want to put the dog up for 9 months.
Sure.
And and the more time you spend with your dog, whether it be those types of trials or hunting, the more time you spend with them, the better they're going to be.
Yeah.
But the field trials and evaluating dogs and trying to raise a better puppy has pushed me towards the the AKC field trials because again I can tell more faster by watching them when we're asking them to run at a wider range, pick out objectives, be on the downwind side.
Visually, you're saying because you're up higher on a horse? Are you saying visually you see their maneuvers more?
No, it's not so much that. It's that you're asking that dog to go full tilt as fast as he can, but still hunt the ground. And so the dog's got to make decisions on where he's going to run and pick out the objectives, put himself on the downwind side, but still keep in mind where you're at and work towards the front and connect his casts so that he's efficient in his use of basically, rather than hunting the area that you're in, hunting the country. And you can tell more about a dog faster that way, in the way of their intelligence, their ability to smell birds, their desire to point. If they're over the hill and they're standing there and a bird walks out in front of them, they've got a decision to make. Am I going to do what Jeff wants and stand here and point, or I might be able to catch that sucker, and a dog that's honest enough to stay there, and Jeff tops the hill and there's the dog standing on point. That is pretty far-fetched for the average hunter. He doesn't want his dog, a hill or two over.
Sure.
But that same dog that's honest enough to stand there and wait for you to get there, and he took the draw in the low part of the land to get there, and the judge saw that. That's, like I said, a hunting dog, only more so.
Yeah.
And it's it's like, what does Indy have to do with driving your car to the church on Sunday? They learned a lot about cars from Indianapolis, and you learn a lot about dogs, from the competitions.
Yeah.
And the you're pushing them. You've got to have them conditioned, and they've got to know what you want. You've got to be a good team to be successful.
That's so much good wisdom right there. I don't know. I've heard this personally from some people. I don't know if you've heard this too, but some people will say a really good field trial dog is great, but they can't be a great hunting dog too.
I hunt everything. I mean, I again have to balance, the workaday world, family life, with hunting and field trials, and I don't have the time to have a hunting dog and a field trial dog. They've got to exist within the same animal.
They got to do both,
and they've got to have the intelligence to know the difference. Whether I'm on foot or whether I'm on horseback, and adjust accordingly.
Yeah.
And everything I've always owned has had to do both.
That's great.
And some do it better than others.
Sure.
And make that transition. And it's always, especially with the dogs that are 2-3 years old, that transition when we're coming off of the fall field trial season and November rolls around and I need to go shoot something. That's
is that where you see it's
younger
harder?
dogs? It's a little tougher for them to make that transition, okay. And I have to pick my fields accordingly. Where I hunt the older dogs that are experienced and the puppies, and those what I call the kind of the teenage years. Those dogs are going to have the tougher time making that transition. But by the end of hunting season, I've ground them down enough to they realize that, hey, we're walking and I've got to check in more.
Yeah.
And everybody has their own hunting style, and I do like a dog that runs and make some casts when I'm out hunting, because I don't want to have to walk the entire field.
Sure.
I'll send a dog down a draw, a short draw that's not the main part of the field, but send them down it to so I don't have to walk down it. But a dog that's hanging out around 100 to 200 yards when I'm hunting is what I want most of the time.
Yeah. And
they learn how to adjust and handle pheasants, that's and it's always been that way with the dogs that I've had.
That's great.
So
that's great. So how long have you been judging with AKC events? How long have you been a judge?
I started judging in about the late 80s. So late 80s. So we're talking probably 80, 88, 89 is when I first judged. So 30 some years.
Okay. So this will be kind of a two-parter. One, can you just, for any of the younger folks out there, or maybe they're just getting started into this, talk about just logistically, what's the judging scoring system or the judging process logistically? And the second piece is, as you're judging, as you're riding along, watching a dog, an adult dog, let's say, what are you looking for as you're judging that dog? So they might go; those two parts might go hand in hand. But first, maybe tackle what is that AKC judging process?
Well, with the adult dogs, there's two types of stakes: gun dogs and all-age dogs. And the gun dogs are more similar. And if a new person is going to a field trial, I encourage them to go watch a gun dog stake first, because it's you'll be able to recognize that after watching a field of a stake of dogs run through a gun dog stake, that it is the type of dog that can be hunted. Some of them will still make some wide casts in a gun dog stake, but it is not as far fetched. An all age stake, they want a dog to really run wide, and for the average hunter to go out and watch an all age stake for the first time at a field trial, it looks pretty far fetched and not as closely related to hunting as what your average hunter would want to see. In a gun dog stake and in an all-age stake, I want the same thing out of the bird work. I want to see a dog hunting the places on the course that are most likely to hold a wild bird. I want to see them put themselves on the downwind side of an objective. An objective is like a draw or a tree line, a fence row. They always need to know where the handler's at. In a gun dog stake, they're going to be in sight most of the time. In an all-age stake, they might be out of sight quite a bit of the time, but working their way forward.
Okay.
And in a gun dog stake, I don't like to hear a handler constantly yelling at the dog. More quiet is better, but yet still an aggressive ground pattern. But keeping an eye on which way the handler's going, and dogs are really quick to learn how to key off the horse's head and work their way to the front, and that just makes it easier with the hunting pattern. In an all-age stake, again, the bird work is the same. We're looking for them to hunt the objectives. It's the same. You want to see a stylish find, head and tail high, I prefer to see birds pointed from a distance. The stronger their nose, the more likely that they'll be able to handle a wild bird in the same situation. And you want to see that in both the all-age and the gun dog stakes. But the big difference between the two is in an all-age stake, you really want to see a dog that's going to dig into cover and may be gone for a while, but yet find its way to the front and know where the handler's at. In all-age stakes, they sometimes have a person scouting, which is he's helping the handler. So if the dog is out of sight, he goes and checks the area that the dog was last seen to see if he's on point over there. Okay. And I don't really want to see a scout handling the dog or really having to help the dog get to the front. I want to see them in both stakes, come with the handler. But in an all-age stake, the dog's going to move out a lot faster, cover a lot more terrain, and that again, I can tell more about a dog faster in that format, because you can really tell a dog's intelligence. When I went to my first field trial back in, it would have been 1979, Lloyd Budd was one of the pros there, and he's an old-time Brittany guy, and we had at this particular field trial, we had what they called wrangler horses. I didn't have a horse, and they were looking for a bird planter, and so I volunteered. As much as nobody wanted to ride the old quarter horses, they usually ride gaited horses at the field trial, and the quarter horses were quite rough, but I thought that was great. I was probably 17 to have a horse to ride, to be able to go watch this field trial and learn something. Yeah. And I got to watch Lloyd run a dog by the name of The Real Thing, and his call name was Coke. He was directly out of Bandee, and I got to watch Coke go out and lay down a race, an all-age race. It was a 30-dog all-age stake, and I didn't know what I was looking at, but I could tell by the way everybody in the gallery who was watching the field trial was acting that, this was a great performance that this dog was putting down. Coke had a stop to flush on a pheasant, and then had a find about halfway through the course, and wound up winning that day. Coke wound up winning the National Amateur Championship that fall. That performance that I saw, at that early age is stuck in my mind, and I patterned everything, as far as what I look for in a dog, and I still remember that particular course and that performance, and The Real Thing is one of the foundation Brittany's that we'll get to talking about bloodlines later, but The Real Thing was Ramarda's Trademark's dad, and Ramarda's Trademark was a very influential Brittany.
Wow.
So
that's
anyways,
cool.
But is that kind of
long-winded
answer for,
That was perfect, and
Coke,
more.
Yeah,
That's cool. I don't think I've heard you talk about Coke before.
No, you haven't. But it was like I said, the first things that happen to you with your first dogs and your first field trials are really kind of etched into your mind, and you pattern a lot of things off of those, and Lloyd, he also trained Coke's dad, Bandy,
Okay.
and Bandy is behind. We're going to talk about it, but he's behind everything.
Okay.
That the Beans Blaze line, the Ramarda's trademark line,
Wow.
and I learned a lot at the field trials by watching Lloyd, by watching Bob, by watching Roscoe Staten. That was one of my main ways of learning, about dog training, and that's why I'd encourage people to go to hunt tests, to go to NASTRA, even if you're not interested in participating, you can still learn a lot about dog training.
Sure.
By watching these competitions, because again, competition forces people to, the desire to win forces them to, push the edge.
Sure.
And that's how you learn more about dog training.
I love that. Last question before we kind of wrap up this hunt test trial section here, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we talked about this. This might have happened to Spencer recently. As a judge, when you're judging an event, talk about a dog that has, say, 2 fines versus a dog that has 5. The dog that has 2 fines, they could still win, correct?
Yes. At the field trials, and this is where with NASTRA's, they count the number of fines, and and it's in an open field, and there's a lot to be said for that, because that's what we're all about, is finding birds.
Sure.
And the thing about bird finding is conditions change within a few hours, and you can start out the day with high humidity, low wind, and a breeze, and the sending conditions are perfect. And before the trial's over with, the wind can come up, the humidity can drop, and bird finding can, just get downright tough. And to judge a dog solely on their ability to find birds, and in the morning there might be more birds on the course, and so to count birds and solely base it on that, especially at an AKC trial, it isn't really a fair judgment of the dog, because at the end of the day you're trying to pick out the best bird dog. And where they hunt, if the dog has 5 fines, but they're not very far off the course, and they're the dog isn't digging into cover but just happens to find birds, that isn't as gonna be as effective in the long run as the dog that digs into cover and doesn't necessarily have maybe the most range, but digs into the cover, hunts the downwind side of the cover, and is continually hunting in the birdie likely spots, and sometimes the bird planners won't necessarily have the birds in those places like they should, and the dog that has those dug up finds, that are deep into the cover and has to work for them, in my mind, outshines the dog that just has the easy ones that are just off the horse path or just off the course.
Yeah.
And all the dog games, and I call them games, being field trials, hunt tests, NASTRA, they're all games at the end of the day. The only real deal is going hunting all day long. And that dog that's still able to go strong at the end of the day and is still punching into the cover is what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And that's the one that's going to find you the most birds at the end of the day.
Sure.
And that's why the quality of the finds, at a field trial, should win over the quantity.
That's great. I love that. All right, we're going to move into puppy development, and I kind of wanted to start off before we kind of get into the puppy development. Take it back to when you were picking a puppy. So when you're picking a pup from a litter, whether it's your own litter or when you're picking one up from that early stage, just take us through, like, what are some of the things that you personally are looking for in that dog, knowing what you're going to do with it later.
Okay, I'm gonna talk from a breeder standpoint. When you go look at a litter of pups, and if you're just looking, if you're wanting a family dog and a hunting dog, 80 to 90% of the puppies that I wind up selling, that's the home that they go to. If you're looking at a litter and mom and dad are both field trial dogs, that's a fairly hot litter for your average everyday hunter. And what you should be looking for in that case is not necessarily the most aggressive puppy in the litter. One that's solid as far as being outgoing, but yet likes people, not skittish about new things. I love taking puppies for walks, and I evaluate them on these walks. As myself personally, I'm looking for the more aggressive puppies in the litter, the ones that aren't afraid of anything, but yet like people, come with you, seem to pay attention to what you want them to do, but yet are bold enough to go exploring on their own. But that's not what I would push or encourage your average, hunter, family pet owner to look for if you're looking at a trial, a trial bred litter. Or Naster, bred, because some of those dogs are pretty hard going too.
Sure.
You want, but above all else, you want a puppy that's not skittish, that seems well socialized, likes people. I like a puppy when I pick it up and I'm handling it. I don't like them to be squirmy. I like them to submit. I like them to, like the personal attention. I think as I've gotten older, easy to train has gotten more important. And a puppy that submits quickly, when in that situation, to me, lots of times is going to be easier to train. But you put them down, and they're full of all kinds of energy, and they're off across the yard and nothing flat. If you're looking at a litter where both mom and dad are all day hunting dogs, then maybe you are looking for the more aggressive puppy in the litter. If you like a dog that hunts aggressively, you kind of got to take the parents into consideration. And ideally, the best thing is to get to watch mom and dad hunt. And that's where the competitions give you the chance to do that, even though they're geared up for the competition. That they act different at the field trials. The same dogs act different at the field trials than they do when they're getting taken hunting. But still, you can get an idea of what they're made of. As parents, and you're looking for a puppy that's similar.
When it comes to pointing and bird finding, are those things are those important for you? Do you like to see those early point when they're a couple months, or are you okay with that coming later?
I'm not okay with that coming later. I want to see that early.
Okay.
I think in puppy development, I call it imprinting. I think it's similar to, let's just say, with children. They teachers will emphasize reading to your kids at a young age, and you're basically imprinting them with the ability to learn and teaching them how to learn, and trying to get them, to read books and gain knowledge that way. It's the same thing with puppies. We want to get them imprinted at a young age that this is what their life is going to be, is searching for game, searching for birds. And I'm a firm believer that 8 weeks I'm showing them a pheasant wing, 10 weeks I'm showing them pigeons. I've probably even showed them pigeons closer to 8 weeks with the litter in the puppy pen. I've flown pigeons by and let them smell the pigeons. Again, I'm imprinting them. I'm trying to get them to realize that, hey, that's really cool and that's fun stuff. And it's important to keep it fun, to get those instincts lit, so to speak, and get the light bulb to turn on. But I think that's where a lot of people in the training process really miss the boat, is they don't take advantage of those young years and get them imprinted with bird hunting is what my life is going to be about.
Sure.
And I use a lot of pigeons. I like Johnny House quail with the young puppies. Johnny House are callback birds. Quail out of a callback pen is the equivalent of wild birds to an adult dog. And I like pigeons out of a release trap when it's done correctly.
Sure.
But again, the goal is to get them imprinted at a young age. Same thing with retrieving instincts. Closing all the doors in a long hallway and throwing the ball down to the other end and getting, the puppy's only got one way to go, and that's to bring it back to you. With puppies, you really need to do something every day with them. Whether it's take them for a walk. You don't have to work birds with them every day, but preferably, if you're going to compete, you've got to work birds with them a few times a week. The average hunter, if they can get them around birds once or twice, every couple of weeks. But it's important to take them on walks, and in a field where they can just explore and teach them to come with you, and hunt with you, and whether it's chasing Tweety birds or butterflies, that's all good stuff. It's got wings, and we're it's kind of like, I equate it back to Little League, baseball for the kids. You got to make it fun, and it doesn't have to be a long session. You want to leave them wanting more.
Sure.
10-15 minute walk is on a daily basis is really good for the puppies.
Can you talk, since we're talking about birds a little bit, can you talk about taking a young pup, what is your bird intro, I guess, progression with a young dog, right? You talked about a wing, flying some pigeons over. Once they're a little older, what do you start doing with a young pup
I'm going to back up to the wing. Keep in mind they're just pointing by sight, and we don't want to overemphasize that. It's good to see, if you flip a wing out and they immediately point it, that's pretty cool to see. But they're pretty much past that pretty quick. because we want to teach them to point by smell, not sight.
Sure.
When I raise a litter of puppies, when they're 7 weeks old and the whole litter's right there, they're really bold when they're in a litter. And there's 7 of them there. There might be 1 or 2 that are a little standoffish, you know, but I'll take a pigeon, a homing pigeon, and take, you know, put it on the downwind side and hold it and let them all smell it. And then while they're in the cage, and then let the pigeon go and fly away from them and let them watch it fly. And you know, it's always interesting to see what the group of puppies' reaction is. I've seen it all the way from they all just kind of step back to all of them are standing on 2 legs, you know, and watching intently, and you know, and they all go in different stages. It's not that group that where they stood back a little bit. It's not that none of those turned out, but you know, you need to, you know, go through the progression with them and introduce them to, you know, I like pigeons for that matter. You could do the same thing with a quail, let them smell it and then let it fly off. The main thing you don't want to have happen is for them to see a bird for the first time and then have like you know, something in the way of cover, maybe slap them in the face or something like that, or you've got to be careful with the bird traps, you know, that it doesn't pop and scare them. You know, they need to, you know what a bird looks like. You need to make sure that the interest is there. After the litter is separated and I've just got 1 or 2 puppies, you know, I'll take a bird bag and you know, and let them smell the bird and throw it and let it fly off. You know, you got to be careful that they don't get slapped by a wing too the first few times.
Sure.
And but I think that introduction, you know, is critical to you know, one of the things that I'd probably do better as a trainer is I'm probably better with puppies than I am with adult dogs. As far as what I get out of them at a particular age. As I said earlier, you know, I do want to see that pointing instinct young. I don't want to have to wait until they're a year and a half old to find out if they've got what it takes. You know, I want to see a dog, and some people are much more tolerant of that, but I want to see a dog, you know, pointing its birds at 3, 4, 5 months of age.
Sure.
And you know, with the right introduction, you can get them to the point where they'll let you flush at that age too. You know, and I want to see that, and with the right introduction, you can get that out of a puppy, and I think it's critical. Again, you know, going back to what English pointers have compared to the rest of the continental breeds, they have a lot of pointing instinct. They want to point, and have a lot of nose, and you know, I want to see that out of the Brittany's or any other dog that I'm working with at a young age.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about the electronic bird launchers that you use? I've seen you use those quite a bit, and with young pups, you're very meticulous. I've gotten to witness is a pup takes one little step, they move one paw, and you're sending that bird. Can you talk about that process a little bit?
I learned this early on, and then I read a book, Training with Mo, that I'd highly recommend. Morris, and his last name escapes me. Martha Greenlee co-authored the book and wrote it based upon Mo's training methods. And when I read the book, I realized Mo and I were basically doing the same thing. With the traps, your goal first of all, you got to be really careful. Like all electronic equipment, whether it be a collar or a trap, timing is everything in animal training. Whether it be horses, dogs, it's everything. And electronics give you the ability to make a movement at the split second that you need to. And the goal with an electronic release trap is to imitate a wild bird. And because of the electronics, you can do that. Because back in the day with Tiff, I didn't have electronic release traps. I didn't have a Johnny House. I had wild birds, and there's no substitute for wild birds, but that's what made her the dog that she was the amount of time that I put into her. Now there isn't as many wild birds, so you've got to find a way to imitate them. And the electronic release trap gives me that. When the dog is introduced properly to pigeons and smells a pigeon, they'll spin and turn, and the first few times I'll let them take some steps and get closer and then pop the bird. Once they become conditioned and know that smell and know that's a pigeon, I'll when they turn into the wind and they haven't pointed, I'll pop the bird, just like I did just like Tiff learned on the wild birds. If she got too close, the bird went.
Sure.
And back in the day, we were able to train dogs on just wild birds. And the wild birds taught them to stand back and point them correctly.
Sure.
Now with the release traps, we use those to imitate a wild bird. I think the mistake people make with release traps is they want to see that dog point. And the goal is, after that dog is well versed with that smell and that there's a bird, if the dog is still moving, you pop the bird out, just like a wild bird would have flown away.
Sure.
Because the puppy crowded it, rather than pointing it correctly. And it comes down to, that puppy is standing there, and I always want to flush from the front with puppies, and I move slowly. And I read that one time, Gene Casale said, "Don't get in such a hurry to flush birds for your dog in training.
Take your time.
Take your time and walk around, come in from the front so the puppy can see you. And if the puppy takes a step, you stop and pop the bird so the puppy knows that he flushed it, not you."
Sure. Oh, okay.
Okay. You want to come in from the front, because I've had a lot of dogs, early on, that when you went alongside of them, they wanted to make sure they got their best shot at the bird, and they didn't want you to get it.
Oh.
And if you make it more of a team effort, that, hey, we're going to try to pinch this.
That's why you're coming around the front.
We're going to try to pinch this bird
Okay.
in between us. And I'll aim the trap so it shoots when the puppies, when we've done this a lot, and the puppy really knows what they're doing with pigeons, I'll put the trap on its side and point that pigeon so it shoots, or point the trap so it shoots the pigeon right over the puppy's head, which they like.
Okay.
And I'll walk around front, and if the puppy stays there, and lets me flush, I'll shoot that bird right back up over their head.
Okay.
You follow me?
Yeah.
With the
Totally.
And I think the problem that people have with the traps, though, is you need to make sure in the field you know exactly where you put that trap. And you need to pick out a particular bush, because if that puppy gets too close, you need to send that bird out of there. Even if the puppy didn't even have a chance to smell it.
Right.
You know, even if it's more of a wild flush situation, that puppy learns something.
Sure.
You know,
I got too close to that bird. The bird's
I got
gone.
too close. I didn't smell it because I was on the wrong side of the wind. But I made that bird fly because I was too close to it.
Sure.
And the other thing is, from the standpoint of the puppy not getting tangled up with the cage, with the trap.
I was going to say, are you doing that because the damage of that could cause is pretty bad?
Both. I mean, that's the downside of traps. Just like, you know, all electronic equipment. If you let them get too close, you pop that trap open and it slaps the puppy. He'll probably be afraid of traps and you probably won't be able to work them successfully.
Sure.
You know, they'll probably wind up blinking because they're afraid of getting hit by that trap.
Gotcha. That goes back to the imprint on them. It's going to imprint a negative.
Just put a negative imprint on them.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And you know, it's pretty controversial. I mean, there's a lot of very, very successful trainers that will not use an electronic trap. But if I had to, if I had to make my choice between giving up my quail out of a callback pen and my homing pigeons out of a release trap, I'd give up the quail.
Really? Wow. Is that just because you have more?
I can get more work faster with pigeons year-round.
Okay.
You know, you can't work quail during nesting season very easily because they start losing their scent. They want to pair up and go nest.
Gotcha.
And pigeons you can use year-round. They're pretty tough. I shoot a lot of pigeons for dogs, both young dogs and old dogs. You know, going through the breaking process, if you've got them broke to kill, they're pretty broke. And they get to the point where they really like those pigeons and play in that game.
Sure.
And Training with Mo was a very good book that I read recently.
Okay.
And Martha has another one. I think it's Amateurs Training with Professionals.
Okay.
That was a really good book. As I said before, I read Wing and Shot. Best Way to Train Your Bird Dog by Delmer Smith was a very good book. There's another one named Point. I can't think of the author right now.
Okay.
You know, all really good books from the standpoint of training pointing birds.
That's great. Okay, so we're going on. We're getting close to an hour and a half. we're going. This could go a long time.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, just on puppy development, I just have maybe one more question for sure, maybe two, if you don't mind. Talk about your process, because I think it's unique. I think it's pretty interesting how a lot of times you'll take two pups out of a litter and you'll let them get to a certain age and you're really evaluating them, which one you're going to keep going forward, right? Can you talk about that process a little bit and what are some of the key marks that you're watching those two pups hit?
So when I raise a litter or I'm getting puppies out of a litter, I decide, and it's what I call a go forward litter. I decide whether I want a male or a female out of that particular litter. I keep a lot more females than male dogs, and that's another topic. But just to increase my odds of getting what I want, you know, if I decide I want a male puppy out of the litter, I'll try to get my hands on two of them. And there's a lot of things in the training process that it's helpful to have two puppies because they play off of each other as far as being bold. You know, like the first time I take them to the quail callback pen, you know, if both of them are there, or three of them for that matter. The confidence goes there's up. Boldness in numbers, whether they're by themselves. There is a time to do things individually too, but I really there's a lot of things, especially when you're introducing them to something new, that they are a lot more bold in numbers. Now, by the same token, I've seen puppies that my litter mate's scared, maybe I should be too.
Oh, okay.
And you've got to be careful with that. But generally they're a lot bolder when there's two of them, and it just increases your odds of getting the type of dog that you want out of that litter if you've got two to pick from rather than just one. I also, again, because of time, I believe it's, some people would say, well, then keep all the females in the litter or keep all the males in the litter. Well, then you wind up not getting the individual attention to the puppies. And I firmly believe at 8 weeks they need to be separated. Okay. The problem is if you leave them in the same pen with each other, they wind up relating more to dogs than they do humans.
Okay.
So you try to get them separated so that, they know that their human is a really cool individual and I want to be with them and do stuff with them. And if I do have two puppies the same age, I won't put them in the kennels next to each other.
Oh, wow.
I'll separate them so that, maybe there's an older dog in between them. Because again, they are litter mates, and litter mates do need to be separated most of the time.
Sure.
So I use the term they become too doggy. If I don't understand,
too much
I really disagree with the people that. There's a lot of people that think when they get a puppy that they need to get two so they can keep each other company. And I wholeheartedly disagree with that.
All right, that's not your intent.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly disagree with that philosophy. It's more I keep two to, expedite the training process and increase my odds of getting the type of puppy I'm looking for.
Okay. And you keep them through about 6 months, older, younger?
It's not cut and dried. I've kept puppies. Hank and Izzy were 7 months old when I made my decision. On which ones to keep, and I knew I wanted a male out of that litter, and I'm talking about Roustabouts Flat Out and Sniksoh Spanx Hank. The Hank that I didn't keep wound up winning the nationals, and I kept my Hank, and he was a 2-time champion and grand field champion, amateur field champion. But I kept them, and Izzy until they were 7 months old.
Okay.
Before I, made my decisions, and I've kept them up to a year or two, and then I've also made my decision at 4 months. It's when I see definitive traits that I'm looking for, and can make a decision. And sometimes it comes down to I've got a really good home, and for whichever one I don't want, and I might expedite the process a little bit right there, just if the timing is critical to the but usually that's not the case. Usually I take my time with the go forward litters.
Gotcha. Well, awesome. Jeff, thank you so much. I had a feeling this was going to be a two-parter, and we're gonna break this up and do a two-part because we got a bunch more to get to. And thank you so much for your time, and we'll pick up here again in a couple weeks.
Glad to do it.
Thank you. All right, everyone, that's a wrap of episode 38, part 1 with Jeff Hoskins. Part 2 is going to be dropping either later this week or early next week, so make sure you are subscribed to the podcast and be on the lookout for part 2 coming your way very soon. Jeff, thank you so much. I cannot wait for just the response to this episode and hear what some of our listeners were able to gain from hearing your story and hearing some of your knowledge. So thank you again, sir. Hey guys, remember, it's not hunting season right now, which is kind of a bummer, but don't worry. There's so much we can be working on with our bird dogs, getting out there, keeping conditioned. What are your goals? Think through what are your goals for this season coming up. What are you going to be working on with your dog? If you're into trials and that, it's kind of spring trial season right now, so maybe you're working through those, and or maybe you got some goals for next year coming up. So set those goals. What are you working towards? What do you want your dog to be? What do you want your experience to be? So just a reminder, a PSA, public service announcement. Set your goals, make a plan, carve out the time to make that goal a reality and make it happen. Okay, that's my 2 cents. I'm leaving you with that. Hey, remember, any bird dog is better than no bird dog. Go put some miles on those boots and have fun.